Nobody actually wants to work. They want to matter. There's this moment after a really hard sparring session where everything just stops. You're exhausted. Maybe you got hit more than you'd like to admit, and you went and got an ice cream. And I don't know how to explain it, but that ice cream, that specific moment is one of the most alive that I ever feel. It's not the win, it's not this progress, it's just the ice cream after. And I've been thinking about why that is because that moment has nothing to do with productivity or output or mattering in any way that would impress anybody. It's just this feeling, kind of like a wordless feeling. And honestly, I think that's closer to what actually matters than anything I've ever put on some fucking resume, which is a weird thing to realize. And in college, I went to a lot of career fairs. And to be honest with you, they're not about finding something you love. They're about finding a direction when you don't have one. And look, I get it. You know, when you're 20 something and you're genuinely lost, direction feels like meaning. And so many of us attach ourselves onto this idea. But direction and meaning are not the same thing. And a lot of people spend years trying to figure out the difference and confusing the two of them. And I watched a lot of people in my program attach their entire identity to their major. Like it wasn't just what they were studying, it was who they were. So, and then these internships became who they were. And then the job offer became who they were. And at no point in this whole sequence did anyone stop and actually ask themselves, wait, what do I want out of this? Or did I just need to say something when people asked what I was doing with my life? That's not ambition. That's just filling a void whenever there's something else available. And we've collectively decided to call this ambition so that we can feel better. What I think is actually happening is that we've convinced ourselves, and I'm talking about, Gen Z, young adults, whatever, anyone who has an uncertain and large future in front of them, is that survival is what matters. We got to get the job, pay the rent, check these boxes. And I understand why, because survival feels incredibly difficult at this time. We're at war, the cost of prices of gas is up, student debt is not being forgiven, jobs are being taken by AI. I mean, I couldn't blame you for being like, what the fuck is going on? Because personally, I think these same things. And the job market is genuinely cooked. But we need to remember that survival and prosperity are completely different things. Survival is just getting by, and prosperity is this greater experience of living. And when you're locked into this first one, we often end up forgetting that the second one exists. So, the 9 to 5 worker, he grinds for this company that doesn't even know his name, and that gives him a purpose. And I'm not being sarcastic. That actually is their purpose, because humans need direction with feeling attached to it. So whatever you're doing is most likely what you describe as the meaning or the important thing in your life. But these companies don't care about you. They care about output. So what you're actually doing is handing this sense of meaning and what matters to something that will never give it back to you. And you just keep showing up, which is kind of insane when you say it out loud. And I understand so many of us don't have another option, but we need to realize how backwards this value equation is. And Sartre, he's a philosopher, he speaks on this. So he had this idea that existence precedes essence, which sounds like something you'd hear in class and a little bit pretentious, but it's relatively simple. So you are not the things on paper, the job title, the degree, the 5-year plan. Those are just the ideas that you hold on about yourself. So they're not you. And what they actually are is the experience of what you actually are is this experience of being alive right now. So the senses, the moment, your feelings, when you're fully present and actually present and not, mentally rehearsing, this next move, this next part of your plan. So you're none of those things at all. You're just here. And that can be uncomfortable for a lot of people because it means that the things that they've been using to define themselves don't actually touch the real them at all. It's just some story that we tell ourselves so that we feel safe, which means they could tell a completely different story tomorrow. And most people find the idea terrifying instead of empowering. But I think it's kind of exciting because it explains that, the misery or sadness that we may feel in the present is not assigned to our character, and that we're not just bound to define our meaning of life constantly by something we're working towards. You could work a dead end job and still have tons of meaning in your life. You could be broke, you could be poor, and still be happy, because if you're just this essence, then you don't have to be the thing. And so the moments that have mattered the most to me have never been just like achievements. They've been these experiences. So things like, jumping into a river with friends when no one has anywhere to be, coming up with this idea at midnight for like a next like creative project that I want to invest into. And that is something that belongs completely to me and belongs completely to you. Ice cream after sparring, when my body is wrecked and the ice cream tastes like amazing, like I'm drinking and eating this like fountain of youth and health. It's amazing. And those moments are the meaning. And that doesn't translate to a resume. Nobody really gives you credit for them. And I think that they are actually the substance of human life because often they're not captured online. It's not something we're recording and posting and feeling like we need to get this constant validation from. And that direction like matters. Having in direction in general also matters. Having something that you're working towards is super important. But we need to remember that that direction is not necessarily the destination, and the destination is not the point. In fact, you are at the destination. Like this right now, this is the destination. And it makes you say like, what the fuck? Like that's the kind of a weird thing to think about when you really have to grind towards something better in life. But if you don't appreciate these small moments, then you end up never living. And most people know this. But they just spend most of their lives ignoring it though, because like when you're in survival room mode, it doesn't leave the room for, presence. And by the time you slow down, it's already gone. And the system wants you to feel this way, because if you're never present, then you never realize the ways that you're getting fucked over, because you're convinced that, this work, your employer, your company is you, and that they're necessary and benefiting you. And once you begin to live slightly outside of that, or even just on a mental side to ascribe less value towards the employer or towards the structure of the system, that is when you begin to break free. And so maybe that looks like an artistic project or, something you're passionate about that you can even just fit in an hour every day to do. That is reclaiming your free will. So when I say nobody actually wants to work, I mean that nobody, wants to work to be the whole point. They want to do what matters, and we want to feel that our existence means something beyond output to produce for a company that will replace us without even thinking twice about it. And the uncomfortable thing about, that mattering doesn't come from work is that it needs to come from presence, and how present you are in the life around the work. So this ice cream, the river, these ideas that you come up late at night, your creative projects, the people you're actually with when nothing is being produced and nobody is performing anything are what you're deriving your meaning in all these moments from. And so Sartre was right. Your existence only is the now, not the title, not this degree, and not this plan. It's just this. Like you watching this is your meaning. And the sooner you stop, handing your sense of mattering to things that can't give it back, the sooner you will start to have it. So begin to reclaim this little by little, and you will slowly break out and begin to have free will. And we must fight for it because it's not given to us anymore. But change your mind and change your life. Start now. Let me know what you think.